G'day ladies and gents, and welcome to War Thunder with Mags, and welcome back to War Thunder Ground Forces, and today we're going to be having a look at Russian Bias. Well, more to the point, Russian Bias as in the pack that was made available around April 1st. For those of you who missed it, in a startling display of self-awareness and sense of humour, Gaijin for just a couple of days made a pack available for purchase on the Gaijin store. This pack included 2 tanks and an aircraft, all Russian, and the much revered title of Master of Russian Bias. Now currently the pack is no longer available. It was only available for a very limited period of time during the 1st of April Fool's event. However, that's not to say that the pack may not be available in the future. So what we're going to go through over the next couple of days is the 3 vehicles that were available in this pack. And first up, about to play the world's most lethal game of Ring Around the Rosie, is the T-44-122. The T-44-122 is a rank 4 battle rating 6.3 tank in realistic battle. It's armed with a 122mm D-25-44T cannon with 24 shots, and a secondary weapon that's a 7.62mm DT machine gun. The maximum turret rotational speed of the vehicle is 21.3 degrees per second. Maximum gun elevation is 18 degrees with a maximum gun depression of only -5 degrees. A typical Russian tank in this regard, no gun depression. And with a skilled crew, and I mean by skilled, the crew that I have on this tank is maxed out, but I do not have any of the extra qualifications on the vehicle. The reload time is 26.7 seconds. The tank comes in a cool 31.8 tons with a 500 horsepower engine. Maximum speed is 60 kilometers an hour, and it will get to it, has reasonable acceleration getting there as well. And being a premium vehicle comes with 140% plus 140% Silver Line earning reward and an RP bonus of plus 256%. Now talking about armour, frontal armour is 75mm thick and angled back at 60 degrees with an effective frontal thickness directly from in front of around about 132mm and a maximum thickness at optimal angle of around 170. Side armour is also 75mm thick with 0 angle, however maximum thickness at optimal angle is 170mm at the front of the tank and will go out to 250mm as you progress along the tank's side. This side armour is of course covered by the tank tracks as well, which will in some cases provide a little bit of extra defence to the tank's side. Rear armour is a piecemeal 45mm, can be angled out to a maximum of around 80. In reality, it's only there to protect the engine from MG fire. If something gets behind you, you're in a world of trouble. Now as for the turret armour, the front of the turret is 110mm thick with an effective thickness in the centre of 125mm and angles out as you follow the curvature of the front of the turret to over 500mm at the highly angled extremes. Turret side armour is 80mm thick and 77 to 83 degrees of sloping depending on where you look on the turret, with an effective average thickness of 87mm, but it can be angled out to 150. And last of all, the rear armour of the turret, 75mm thick at 12 degrees, giving you an effective thickness of around about 77mm, and again can be angled out to about 150. Now the last thing to cover, of course, is ammunition options. The T-44-122 does have a few ammunition choices available, but in reality there is only one shell you're going to be looking at, and this is the BR-471B. It's a 25kg shell, moves at 800 meters per second, and carries 272 grams equivalent of TNT at its core. The reason why you'll pick this shell is the penetration values. Why the 122 is a massive gun to be firing, its penetration actually isn't that great. At 10 meters against a flat surface, the BR-471B shell only has 207mm of penetration. At 500 meters that drops to 183 and drops to 162mm at 1000 meters. To compare that against other tanks at a 6.3 battle rating, they tend to average out around about 230mm of penetration at 10 meters and maintain an average 20mm pen advantage across all ranges. So with our round of Ring Around the Rosie finished off, it's time to get through to the main event. Today's main battle is Russia and Britain versus Germany and the United States on Hurtgen Forest, and it turned out to be one of the most amusing battles I had played for a while. Sadly, it wasn't so amusing for that Tiger who took one straight in the face. So, I guess now would be the perfect time to sit back and have a talk about this gun. 122mm cannon mounted to a T-44. Is it overpowered? No. There's a couple of major issues with this gun. First and foremost is the reload time. Nearly 30 seconds. It's a major risk to get this tank into close range encounters or to push a line with the enemy. But the problem with the gun is you have to do it. With a maximum penetration of only 207mm at point blank range against flat armor, you can't afford to snipe from long range in this tank. If you do, you're just going to ricochet and bounce all the time, and you only have 24 shots, so you can't afford to miss too often. It's a tank that needs to be in medium to close range. However, once you've fired the shot, you need to get the hell out of dodge, otherwise you are going to die. And this is a situation you'll face far more often than you like. While 207mm of penetration at 10 meters is by no means a bad penetration figure, once you start counting in the drop-off over range, and start looking at the maximum armor that tanks at around the 6.3 battle rating can achieve angled optimally, and you'll very quickly realise that the maximum engagement range on this tank with a target that is aware of your location and aware you're about to fire on them, and therefore angled, it's only about 500 meters. Which is why I find it most effective to set this tank up in a position where you can ambush enemies that are not expecting you to be there, and get nice shots at their side undefended. But of course, you can't always rely on a perfect engagement happening, so when it comes down to you having to use your armor, well, the T-44-122 actually does very well in this department. The armor isn't any more impressive than the standard T-44, and as most people who are T-44 drivers will know, it is relatively bouncy. However, you really don't want to rely on it unless you absolutely have to, and you most certainly don't want to let the enemy get too close. Shots to the turret ring or from short range will get you dead very quickly. And last of all, we come back to that shell, and, well, as I said just a moment ago, it's a 122mm shell. If you fire a shot and it penetrates the enemy tank's armor, the target is likely dead. If the explosion from the shell itself doesn't take out all the crew members and detonate the ammo racks, the fragmentation from the shell will finish the job. I have only had 2, maybe 3 occasions with this gun where I fired a shot and penetrated the target and not one-shot them. In the end, I think the balancing factor for this particular tank is much like the balancing factor for the KV-2. This tank is very dangerous when its gun is loaded and it is undamaged and it is in a good position for an engagement. However, if it has to fight 2 people at the same time, or it happens to fire a shot and that shot either misses or bounces, you're in a world of trouble. Now, I admit this was slightly overkill, but this situation was actually one of the times that I was most vulnerable inside of this match. That first shot went through and took out the gunner and the loader for this AAA truck. Now, it was a good thing that I did get those guys, because if that shell had missed or I hadn't taken out those guns, with an almost 30-second reload time to be able to get in another shot and nothing but a 7.62 as defense, if that AAA gun had rolled out, charged my position, drove around the side of my tank and started blatting my side or rear armor at close range, he would have cut straight through the armor and there would have been little to nothing that I could actually do to stop him. I'm not close enough to any of my teammates at the moment to have them defend me. However, he gives me enough time to actually reload the gun, and this time I sit, wait, and put one straight through the core of his truck. Again, it's a 122mm shell. That was serious levels of overkill, but it does the job. Once again, much like the KV-2, I feel the T-44-122 is a tank that relies as much on the power of its gun as it does on its psychological effect in order to keep itself defended. When you see something with a 122mm gun on a medium tank at this battle rating, it is a scary thing to come up against. But quite often in battle, players tend to forget that if you pull the trigger on that thing and you don't actually hit something, it's going to be half a minute before they get to do it again, and there's a lot you can do in that time. You'll find that most of the time when you fire a shot in the T-44-122, that you're after firing the shot, your enemy will be diving and scrambling for whatever cover it can find to escape your gun, when what they should really be doing at that point is charging directly at you, as for the next 30 seconds, or longer if you do not have a maximum skilled crew, you are harmless. Now, there is one other important thing to keep into account. This being a medium tank, it does have access to an artillery strike, and that is actually a very useful tool to use, and it's something that you should not squander on things that are not necessary for you to drop it on. The artillery strike is a fantastic way of getting enemies out of cover, so you can actually shoot them with the gun. You don't want to go in ferreting around looking for them. You want them to come out and drive out in front. Minimise your exposure, maximise your cover, and always fire that gun at the flattest, most unangled surface you can possibly find, and you'll do very, very well in this tank. Vice versa, if you're facing it, keep yourself angled at all times, always check your corners, do not let these things sneak up on you. Now you might laugh at that last one there, I mean somebody sneaking up on you in a T-44 with a 122mm gun, but it does happen. I didn't have any words with what... Yeah, you'll see, just watch this. This Walker Bulldog, he is absolutely advertising his position by firing off every MG he's got. I fire and completely donk the shot, 122mm gun going off not 10-20 meters away from his tank, and off he goes, still driving with absolutely no idea of the fact that I'm right behind him reloading the gun. This was possibly the most amazing example of lack of situational awareness that I think I have ever seen, and well, the result was inevitable. So at this point in the match, I'm on 4 kills, the base is pretty much secured, it's going to be knocked over in just a second. As soon as that base is capped, this match is over. It's simply a matter of going through, mopping up the area and making sure there's nobody left to come in and drag this battle out any further than it already has. Since it looks like we've got a good load of tanks that are down watching the valley between the southern spawn point and the A-cap that we're securing now, I decided to go up to the north because there's only 1 or 2 tanks that I can spot up there, and that's really all I can do. The options at this point are either sit in the cap circle and wait for it to finish, or go see if there's somebody to snipe that's coming in to try and interrupt the cap. And while I've been driving around for the last few minutes, I've actually been listening to the engine tones going overhead, and not all of those sound like they're Russian and British aircraft. It sounds like there's definitely some German engines up there as well. And yeah, I don't really want to get bombed at this point, so it's best to not sit in the big obvious cap circle if you don't need to. And sometimes you're gifted with a free and final kill before the match ends. It is worth noting that this particular shell does have an auto detonator on it, which will detonate after it passes about 1.7 meters from the point of impact. So unless you're driving an incredibly light AAA vehicle like a flak truck or something along those lines, it's highly unlikely that this shell is ever going to over-penetrate. If it gets inside your tank, that's where it is going to explode. But anyways, let's check out the results. So the results for today's match was first place for the team with 5 kills and 1 AI kill. Professional X5, Shadow Strike Streak X3 and Heavy Metal Fury. 50,022 Silver Lions with 7,665 vehicle research points with a premium account in the premium vehicle, but no boosters otherwise. So surprisingly not an incredibly high kill match. And that is the one thing that I found with this vehicle. It is extremely powerful, but because of the long reload time and its relative vulnerability to enemy fire that results in you not being able to play as aggressively as you might like in it, you have to play a bit defensively. I found myself not racking up huge scores. Now at a battle rating any lower than where it currently sits, yeah, it would be extremely dangerous, but where it currently sits, or extremely overpowered rather, but where it currently sits I think is actually kind of okay. It's a devastating machine, but it's fairly easy to counter once you understand its capabilities. The biggest issue with it seems to be that a lot of people just don't realise that simply angling your armour against this thing significantly reduces its chances of ever actually getting that big 122 through. While tanks like the Tiger H1 will have problems even angled against this tank if they let it get within around 250 to 300 metres, tanks like the Panther tend to survive better. And once you start facing tanks of equal or better battle rating to your own, the situation very rapidly reverses. It becomes a situation where you will need to close to within 250 to 300 meters in order to have a chance of penetrating their armor. But at that range, they'll have absolutely no problem in going through yours. And at that point, the reload time on the 122 becomes a significant disadvantage at that range, with most of the tanks you'll be facing able to put out almost 2 shots for every shot you fire. At a maximum up tier into the battle rating 7 range, well, things become significantly worse for this vehicle, with almost every tank you face able to penetrate the T-44-122 from almost any range. However, the 122's measly 207mm at 10 meters, or More to the point, 162mm at 1 kilometre, simply not being high enough for tank engagements at the ranges that tend to be common in low to medium BR rank 5 matches. When up tiered to this level, it's really the point where you need to bury this tank into a location and wait for the enemy to come to you, preferably without them actually knowing you're there. Ambushes are the call of the day once you start getting tiered into rank 5 matches. So there it is, the T-44-122, an extremely powerful tank at 6.3, one that is definitely dangerous, but I wouldn't consider it overpowered. A tank that's relatively easy to counter, providing you know what its weaknesses are and how to exploit them. And a tank that can be surprisingly fun to drive. Anyways, ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this video has been informative for you. If you want to check out more of the content on this channel, don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to give me a like on any videos that you do. Until next time, drive smart, drive safe, and I'll catch you on the battlefield.